we have our eye on what is unfolding in Gaza with Israel's war on Gaza. As we brought you previously, so the one thing that Biden has said kind of consistently from the beginning is it would be a, quote, big mistake if Israel was to reoccupy Gaza after this war. We brought you earlier in the week that Netanyahu went on one of the Sunday shows here in America and said, we will occupy Gaza. We will likely occupy Gaza indefinitely until we figure out the security situation. That seems to have caused a shift in the way that the administration is framing their recommendations here and their expectations for Gaza. So this is, I'm going to play you a response from John Kirby, who's the NSC spokesperson. And also then on the other side of that, we have Netanyahu's original comments just for reference. Let's take a listen.
The Secretary of State in his comments today also referred to a, quote, transition period after this conflict. Could you expand on that and explain what does a transition period look like to this administration?
I think he was referring to this idea that, and it came up yesterday, where Prime Minister Netanyahu talked about an indefinite period where they would be on the ground. I think he was referring to the idea, the fact that in the immediate aftermath of conflict, it's certainly plausible that for at least some period of time, Israeli Defense Forces are still going to be in Gaza to manage the immediate aftermath and the security situation. But that nothing's changed about our view that shouldn't be the long-term solution, that it shouldn't be about an IDF reoccupation of Gaza as a long-term governance solution.
Who should govern Gaza when this is over?
Those who don't want to continue the way of Hamas. It certainly is not. I think Israel will, for an indefinite period, will have the overall security responsibility, because we've seen what happens when we don't have it. When we don't have that security responsibility, what we have is the eruption of Hamas terror on a scale that we couldn't imagine.
So you can see the shift there, Saagar, of originally it was this would be a big mistake. Reoccupation would be a big mistake. To now John Kirby going, well, I mean, for some period of time, maybe, yeah, we actually are okay with it.
Getting flashbacks to the Coalitional Provisional Authority. And we were only supposed to be there for a year or so. Rumsfeld said we were going to get out. L. Paul Bremer's going to roll in. He worked for Kissinger. What could go wrong, right? He was one of the best and the brightest. Only took 20 years or so, and we're still dealing with the problems that were there. So yeah, it's all happening. It's all happening again. And even if you listen to the words very carefully of Anthony Blinken around what he says here, they are leaving themselves a lot of room for what occupation is. They can't have occupation, but then they said they might have some occupation. And he had some comments here that were at the G7. Let's take a listen to that.
The only way to ensure that this crisis never happens again is to begin setting the conditions for durable peace and security, and to frame our diplomatic efforts now with that in mind. The United States believes key elements should include no forcible displacement of Palestinians from Gaza. Not now, not after the war. No use of Gaza as a platform for terrorism or other violent attacks. No reoccupation of Gaza after the conflict ends. No attempt to blockade or besiege Gaza. No reduction in the territory of Gaza. We must also ensure no terrorist threats can emanate from the West Bank. We must also work on the affirmative elements to get to a sustained peace. These must include the Palestinian people's voices and aspirations at the center of post-crisis governance in Gaza. It must include Palestinian-led governance and Gaza unified with the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority. And it must include a sustained mechanism for reconstruction in Gaza and a pathway to Israelis and Palestinians living side by side in states of their own with equal measures.
So the U.S. government previously saying, no red lines in terms of what Israel can do. That's really the messaging that matters here. Now he's trying to say, we don't want any forcible displacement. Not now, not after the war. You can look at the videos yourself. Forcible displacement of probably more than 1 million people has already happened. So too late for that one. No use of Gaza as a platform for terrorism. Of course, everyone supports that. No reoccupation of Gaza. Okay, well, maybe respond to what Mr. Netanyahu just said. No attempt to blockade or besiege Gaza. Also, I don't know where where you been, buddy, about what reality in Gaza has looked like for quite a long time. So in any case, to me, this shows just, again, Saagar, the level of weakness from the U.S. as long as there is no willingness to use the leverage that we have at our disposal in terms of the huge amount of aid that we have provided to Israel and are continuing to provide to Israel, and the $14 billion that we're planning to send. These all constitute effectively empty words, and the Netanyahu government has already shown they're going to do whatever it is that they want.
The real problem I'm beginning to see is to compare this, there's going to be a lot of Iraq analogies, the most recent Middle Eastern occupation around this Ahmed Chalabi type gambit. They're like, we're going to put the Palestinian Authority in charge. The Palestinian Authority has barely any legitimacy left in the West Bank.
That's right.
Let alone in Gaza. I mean, people have now lived apart for 17 years. Also, these people are old as hell. They're viewed as corrupt and in the pocket of the West because they have no legitimacy. Now, look, maybe they could have something if they were, put in some sort of quasi-government and they could affirmatively deliver on a two-state solution. But I mean, come on, who actually believes that is going to happen? So then who's going to have actual governing authority? And look at what's happening right now in the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority is viewed as impotent and weak because they can't keep their own people safe from Israeli settlers. So can the Netanyahu government with a straight face claim that there will be no settlers or at all inside of Gaza? At the same time, I mean, what about Israeli soldiers? Think about the incendiary nature of that 1, 2 years, 3 years out of providing the security situation on the streets and them trying to claim that they are legitimate. That is why the Iraqis turned against the people that we put in charge in the first place, is because they were viewed as a tool of the West and not able to stand up to us and not looking out for their best interests or their security. So, I mean, I just see this is a nightmare situation. And part of the problem, too, is if we install the PA with international authority and all of this, and the population turns against them, the exact same thing that happened in Iraq is going to happen. We're going to see a full-blown sectarian war, like we did in 2005, the war between Fatah and Hamas. We're going to see it times 50 at this point, because Iran and all the other proxies are going to back up Hamas to try and regain control of the government. And the Israelis are going to get caught in the middle of it if they're doing the security situation. And worse, they want us to come in and occupy Gaza. Don't forget that little plan. American peacekeepers and French keepers. Our guys getting blown up in the middle of all this. So I say hell no to this whole plan. This is part of the problem. This is regime change. Like, let's just all be honest about it. This is straight up regime change. And I hate the regime in Gaza too. Don't get me wrong. But if you're going to go in, you're going to roll them, you better have a good plan for day 2. And I don't see one right now.
Let's say, and you all know I think this is magical thinking, but let's say you're able to eradicate Hamas, whatever that even actually means. What kind of a political group do you think is going to organically rise to power in Gaza, given the, blockade, given the fact that something like a third of northern Gaza has already been destroyed, given the radicalization, the increased radicalization that is going on with the brutality of the Israeli response? What sort of political project do you think is going to have appeal and legitimacy in such a situation, given what these people have suffered through? So that's number one. Number two, on the Palestinian Authority, I mean, it's not just that they're seen as in the pocket of the West. Like, that's real. That perception is real because they cooperate with the Israeli occupation forces in the West Bank. And, it's commonly accepted within the West Bank that actually when you see the Palestinian Authority, their police officers pull back, you better run and hide, because that means they're basically making way for the IDF to come through in some sort of a raid. That's the level of cooperation and collaboration that is ongoing there. And you have, you've had over, I think, 150 people in the West Bank killed since October 7th. And that is indicative of the way that the PA doesn't do anything to keep them safe. So they feel completely on their own. So yeah, the PA has no legitimacy in the West Bank. It has no legitimacy in Gaza. And the idea that you're going to somehow, the U.S. and Israel are going to bestow them with legitimacy to the Palestinian people, like, give me a break. It makes no sense, which is exactly why, I think it's so likely that Israel is going to continue to try to pursue what has been laid out in that, Israeli government memo of what we really want is to push them all of the Palestinians out of Gaza into Egypt and make that the only possibility that will really work and force it on Egypt and force it on the US. And it may seem like a long shot now, and maybe it doesn't ultimately happen, but we already know from reporting that's what they're actually pushing behind the scenes. And you can, that's part of the Netanyahu's Likud party and his right-wing coalitional partners. That has been part of their longtime goals, so it's no surprise that that's what they would be pushing for. But it also, when you have the impossibility and impracticality of every other possible situation, and a Gaza that, the parking lot meme is coming to fruition, they're going to say, well, what else can we do? What else is possible?
I don't know. I listen, in terms of at least pushing them out, that means war. The Egyptians already told us that. And so we should listen to them. They take this stuff very serious. And the people inside Gaza are going to take it seriously too. If it becomes a fight, right now it's a fight with Hamas. If it becomes a fight for being able to stay, well, I think a lot of those people are going to take up arms. Again, it's the exact same thing. Playbook in Iraq, it's not difficult to see it. It literally happened in all of our living memory. In fact, Netanyahu encouraged us to go into Iraq. He said we would be greeted, with open arms. And he got to see firsthand how all that worked out. Anyway, maybe you should listen.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.